Today we are going to look at the story of Henry Clay Frick, who was once the richest man in the world. But before he was a multi-billionaire, he was just a poor coke producer. And how he rose to power is pretty insane. Chapter 1. The Coke King's Humble Beginnings. Henry Clay Frick was born on December 19, 1849, in West Overton, Pennsylvania. This was a place without electricity or running water. His father, a Scottish immigrant, worked as a handyman and died when Henry was only 11 years old. This left his mother Eliza to raise Henry and his 3 siblings alone. Growing up in poverty, Frick knew he didn't want the same fate for himself. So he dropped out of school in the 6th grade to help his mother support the family. At 14, he got a job as a laborer at the local coke ovens. This is where he learned the coke business from top to bottom. For those who don't know, coke is a fuel made from heating coal in the absence of air. It's not coal, but it can be used in the same way. It was an extremely important component in steel production, while other young men were trying to make fortunes in oil or railroads. Frick was obsessively studying the coke industry. Frick would diligently work his way up the ranks, learning every aspect of the business, from managing the ovens to bookkeeping to sales. Even though he didn't have a formal education, he was said to be a quick learner. He spent hours upon hours studying technical manuals and business ledgers. By the age of 24, he had proven himself to be an exceptional manager and skilled businessman. In 1871, Frick borrowed $2,000 from his mother and founded his own coke company, the H.C. Frick Coke Company. He started with just 4 beehive ovens, which were basically small dome-shaped furnaces for producing coke. But he quickly grew the business by focusing on quality and efficiency. While most producers used inferior materials and shoddy techniques, Frick stuck to high standards, which meant that he could charge higher prices. He didn't cut corners, and this may seem obvious, but his business philosophy was simple. He saw an industry ripe for disruption, and despite being self-educated, he knew he could do better than the competition. Before long, he was supplying high-quality coke to some of the biggest buyers in the area. And by the time he was in his mid-30s, he had become the leading coke producer in the Connellsville coke region. People called him the Coke King. Chapter 2. The Partnership with Carnegie. By the 1880s, Andrew Carnegie was in the process of building a massive steel empire. His goal was to produce strong steel beams for buildings and bridges at a low cost. His secret was to use coke instead of charcoal for smelting iron ore into steel. Using coke was cheaper and more efficient. This was because coke produced hotter temperatures, which meant that the process of smelting steel was faster. But as Andrew Carnegie expanded his steel empire, he realized that he couldn't keep up with demand for coke. He needed a supplier. Meanwhile, Frick had built up a strong business, but he knew that he couldn't compete with Carnegie if he tried to sell to him. So he wrote Carnegie a letter saying, "If you want the best coke in this market, you must buy it from me." Carnegie was impressed by Frick's confidence and agreed to purchase all of his coke. This deal made Frick rich, but he wanted more. He wanted to be part of Carnegie's steel empire. But Carnegie wasn't sure if he wanted to let Frick run any part of his company. He had always done things his own way, and he didn't want anyone telling him what to do. However, after meeting Frick, he realized that he might be wrong. Frick was intelligent, ambitious, and driven, and he had a talent for making money. In 1889, Carnegie Steel Corporation and H.C. Frick Coke Company merged. Frick became the chairman of Carnegie Steel, and so began one of the most successful business partnerships in history. Carnegie focused on producing steel, while Frick focused on making money. Frick developed a reputation for being able to squeeze every possible penny out of every transaction. He was a master of leveraging his position and getting what he wanted. But as their partnership grew, so did the tension between them. Frick had been in charge of his own company, and he was unhappy about taking orders from Carnegie. Carnegie, for his part, was frustrated by Frick's unwillingness to trust him. Chapter 3: The Homestead Strike. The year is 1892, and the United States is in the middle of a severe economic depression. Many people are out of work, and those who still have jobs are struggling to get by. Frick wanted to reduce labor costs, but the workers weren't having it. They had just received a raise, and they didn't want to give it back. But Frick was determined to get what he wanted. He locked out the workers and hired the armed guards from the Pinkerton National Detective Agency to protect the mill. The striking workers weren't having it, though. They saw the Pinkertons as scabs, and they wanted them gone. On July 6, 1892, a group of striking workers snuck onto the grounds of the Carnegie Steel Company's Homestead plant near Pittsburgh and attacked the Pinkerton guards. The guards returned fire and the workers retreated. But the next day, the workers came back with a vengeance. They attacked the guards again, this time killing 7 of them and injuring many more. The Pinkertons were forced to flee. News of the violence spread quickly and people were outraged. They saw the Homestead Strike as a battle between the working class and the wealthy elite. And Frick was the perfect villain. He was the embodiment of everything that the working class hated about the wealthy. He was ruthless, he was powerful, and he had no sympathy for the plight of the working man. Frick was determined to crush the strike. He brought in thousands of strikebreakers to replace the striking workers. The strike lasted for 5 months, but in the end, it was clear that the workers would not win. On November 12, 1892, the workers voted to return to work. Chapter 4: The Bitter Feud and Final Split. The Homestead Strike had taken a toll on Frick and Carnegie. They had both lost money, and they had both been vilified in the press. But Frick was furious with Carnegie. He felt that Carnegie had betrayed him by not standing up for him in the press. Frick was also angry that Carnegie had not given him more power in the company. Frick believed that he was the brains of the operation and that Carnegie was just a figurehead. But Carnegie wasn't interested in listening to Frick's complaints. He was determined to move on from the strike, and he didn't want to be reminded of it. Frick's complaints only made Carnegie more determined to push Frick out of the company. In 1900, Carnegie offered Frick $1 million for his shares of Carnegie Steel. Frick thought that the offer was insulting and he refused. Carnegie then went to the press and accused Frick of trying to blackmail him. Frick was furious. He had never been accused of blackmail before, and he was outraged that Carnegie would try to paint him as a bad guy. Frick decided that he had had enough of Carnegie. He would take him to court. The lawsuit was nasty and personal. Frick accused Carnegie of being a liar and a thief. Carnegie accused Frick of being a bully and a blackmailer. In the end, Frick won. Carnegie had to pay him $12 million for his shares of Carnegie Steel, but the victory was bittersweet. Frick had proven that he was right, but he was now out of the company that he had helped to build. He had been betrayed by his best friend, and he was now richer than ever before. But he was also bitter and alone. Chapter 5: The Millionaire's Legacy. After leaving Carnegie Steel, Frick invested in railroads and real estate. He became one of the largest shareholders in the New York Central Railroad, and he purchased large tracts of land in Florida and North Dakota. He was also a major investor in the Singer Manufacturing Company. Through these investments, Frick became one of the richest men in the world. But Frick wasn't just a businessman. He was also a philanthropist. He donated millions of dollars to public charities, museums, and universities. When he died in 1919, he left a legacy of art and culture that few others could match. But Frick's legacy is a complicated one. He was both a brilliant businessman and a ruthless killer. He was a philanthropist and a tyrant. He was a legend and a monster. Frick was a product of his time. He lived in an era when the rich were becoming richer and the poor were becoming poorer. He was a member of the elite class and he knew how to use his power. But he was also a man of contradictions. He was a teetotaler who loved opera. He was a businessman who donated millions of dollars to charity. He was a killer who was also a patron of the arts. Frick was a man who could not be easily categorized. Now, if you want to learn about the railroad baron who literally owned America, check out the video on my channel. Thanks for watching.